Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and thank you to the witnesses for your willingness to be a part of this conversation. The cartels and transnational criminal organizations that bring fentanyl into America and engage in human trafficking, including that of children, must be stopped. The Department of Homeland Security, with its broad authorities and dedicated workforce, plays an important part in these efforts. In particular, Customs and Border Protection's Office of Field Operations and Immigration and Custom Enforcement's Homeland Security investigations. I would like to first address the issue of fentanyl. As well as every member of this subcommittee, we all know that the fentanyl is devastating our communities across this great nation. It is now the leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 45. More than 150 people die each day from an overdose related to fentanyl. At the current rate, more Americans will die in the next decade from fentanyl than combat deaths in all the wars since America's founding. Yet most of the fentanyl killing Americans is coming from abroad, starting as precursor chemicals in China before being turned into the deadly drug by the Mexican cartels and then obtained from internet sources, shipped via mail, or smuggled across the border into the United States. Today's witnesses are subject matter experts on the interdiction of drugs and combating criminal organizations. Like the thousands of their colleagues, the officers, agents, and analysts who show up every day to work on the front lines, I want to say thank you. This ultimately is an appropriations hearing, so as ranking member of this subcommittee, I would be remiss if I did not note that President Biden's budget proposal for fiscal year 2024 for DHS lacks a coherent strategy and requests woefully underfunds and insufficiently resources, both with manpower and others, to DHS to be able to effectively fight this fight, and particularly looking at the amount of dangerous drugs that are entering this country on a daily basis. In FY 2022, CBP's Office of Field Operations interdicted 12,500 pounds of fentanyl at the ports of entry. Just halfway through FY 23, that level of interdiction has already been surpassed. But President Biden's budget proposal only requests to add 150 new officers to the already overworked and thinly stressed 25,000 officers who staff the ports of entry each day. And while the president's budget requests funding for additional inspection equipment at the borders, given how quickly the transnational criminal organizations adapt, the deployment of this technology and other types of technology being used, it has to be strategic, it has to be thoughtful, it has to be coherent. While the bulk of fentanyl is largely being brought through the ports of entry, the amount being seized between the ports of entry is also alarming. In all of FY 22, 2,200 pounds were seized by Border Patrol agents in between the ports of entry. That is enough to kill every single person in America. They have already seized 1,400 pounds through March of FY 23, including 264 pounds in January, 381 pounds in February, 531 pounds in March. This is 85% of the total amount seized in just the last 3 months. Similar to the great work done by CBP, we have seen time and time again that HSI's work is critical to our nation's efforts to interdict drugs, including the 21,000 pounds of fentanyl it seized in FY 22. But we have already surpassed that amount by nearly 10% halfway through fiscal year 2023. This begs the question, what happens in 8 days when Title 42 goes away and the 5,800 daily encounters that are averaged by Border Patrol agents by this own administration's admission will likely double? The answer is we are likely to see more fentanyl being brought in, which will lead to more American deaths, but also more deaths of migrants trying to buy their way into the United States by smuggling for the drug cartels. The reality is that President Biden knew this when he formulated his budget proposal for FY 24. His administration notified Congress on January 26 that the public health emergency and Title 42 usage would end on May 11th. Yet on March 9th, the president released a budget request that proposed cutting the Department of Homeland Security's base budget by 1%. That budget proposal inadequately funds efforts to combat fentanyl, secure the border, and strongly enforce our nation's existing immigration laws. This is deeply irresponsible, and it is a direct disservice to the incredible men and women on the ground working to protect and serve our nation each and every day. This hearing, though, is not just about fentanyl. It is also about the transnational criminal organizations which traffic not just drugs, but in people, vulnerable men, women, and children who often pay with their lives, like the 53 migrants who died after being stuffed in a tractor trailer just last year. Smuggling people across the border nets the cartels $13 billion a year. HSI works to bring down the transnational criminal organizations, and these cartels need to be brought to justice. Yet FY24 President's budget for HSI calls for just 22 new positions, an increase of less than 0.5%, to combat human trafficking, child exploitation, counter fentanyl, and investigate cyber crimes. Similar to the worsening conditions we are likely to confront with fentanyl once Title 42 goes away, I am sure the cartels are already busy planning on how to take advantage of what is sure to be an even more chaotic situation and continuing to profit from human trafficking. The cartels are ruthless. They operate with near impunity in Mexico. They are well-financed, well-organized, and well-connected. While there are certainly differences among this committee on how to handle the crisis at the border, there is surely an agreement that something must be done to stop them from enslaving one more man, assaulting one more woman, or sexually trafficking one more child, or killing one more person. CBP and ICE do great work, but there is no doubt that more work needs to be done to stop the illegal flow of drugs and people across our borders, to take down the criminal organizations that profit from these activities. As ranking member of this subcommittee, I want to ensure CBP and ICE that you be properly funded. Effectively deploying your assets at our border is critical, where there is a crisis, even if this administration refuses to admit that. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and to the witnesses. I certainly look forward to a robust discussion today.